Hey there, I'm Ann Teagarden, and this is episode 83 of the Unveiled podcast. Thanks for joining me today. So, the other night, Grant and I were flipping through the TV channels in a hotel room and ended up watching a rom com. Realistic? No, but I do love watching them anyway. I'm a romantic fairy tale lover at heart, but I'm also realistic enough to know that real life's not like that. The next morning, as I was reflecting on the movie when I was supposed to be having time with the Lord, I heard God ask me in my spirit, "You like happily ever after stories, don't you?" Yeah, I do. And then he shared the following insights with me that I'd like to pass on to you. And spoiler alert, there is a happily ever after. So, does that phrase, "and they all lived happily ever after," does it give you the warm fuzzies? It does me. Now, maybe it has the opposite effect on you. Maybe you roll your eyes and scoff and say, "Yeah, right." So if you're in that second camp, think back to your childhood. Did it give you warm fuzzies then? I am the first to admit that Hallmark Christmas movies are cheesy, predictable, and low quality. But I still like watching one every December. Why? Because they make me feel good. I read an article on the internet about the popularity of Hallmark romance movies, and it basically said the same thing. Most everyone agrees the movies aren't that high quality, but they are enjoyable to watch. Why? I think it's the same reason that all rom coms appeal to us. Deep down, we're longing for happily ever after. Now, most of us on our wedding day feel like a princess and we're hoping for happily ever after, which feels very attainable on that day. But months later, real life sets in and we realize, yeah, it's not all roses and chocolates. But don't let that make you feel jaded. That happily ever after longing deep in our souls was not originally designed for earthly relationships. It comes from God's original intent for us. He had a happily ever after relationship with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It was God's desire that they live in perfect union with Him. But the fall, their sin, created a separation, and we've been longing for that unity ever since. So we try to find it in romantic relationships. Some give up on a relationship when they realize it's not going to be happily ever after. And after a few tries, some give up on relationships altogether or happiness in general and become very jaded. Humans, unfortunately, are humans, and we will never achieve perfection on this side of heaven. But that's exactly the point. There is a happily ever after for us on the other side. Life is a fairy tale of sorts with a happily ever after ending. All fairy tales are full of hardship and danger and anger and hurt. Think Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, or Snow White. It's only at the end of the story that we hear, "and they lived happily ever after." But did they? Yeah, probably not. But that's why the writer has to end the story right there, because earthly relationships will always have ups and downs and hardships to weather. But the end of our earthly story, should we choose to accept it, is happily ever after with the one who loves us perfectly. Now that should give you warm fuzzies. Eternity with Jesus in heaven is our happily ever after. We are the bride and he is the bridegroom. Revelation 19:7 says, "Let us rejoice and be glad and give him glory, for the wedding of the Lamb has come and his bride has made herself ready." Those romance stories resonate with our hearts because it's God's heart for humanity with him. Soak that in for a moment. Our heads may scoff and say it isn't true, but our hearts know it to be true. God's love story for us is that he created us for perfect fellowship with him, and then it was lost. He pursues you relentlessly throughout your life. He laid down his very life for you. John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. God, our Heavenly Father, traded his Son for you. His heart is for you. He's enamored with you. He wants you to know just how much he loves you. Bask in his love for you. Try to grasp an inkling of the depth of his love for you, because you may never be able to grasp the full depth. He loves you as his bride, tenderly, fiercely, protectively. Sit with that for a moment. Your happily ever after is waiting for you in heaven. All you need to do is accept the gift. Admit your need for Jesus' sacrifice. Give your life and future to him. Then no matter what happens here on earth, in the middle of the story, you will already know the warm, fuzzy ending. As my friend Monica was nearing death, she texted me that she had so much peace. She was nearing the end of the story, the happily ever after. And one day she and her husband will be reunited in heaven in the happily ever after. So why am I talking about all this? What does this have to do with the troubles you're experiencing today? Well, we all need hope. Hope is an anchor for our souls. Jadedness, despair, sarcasm, resentment, nothing good comes from those. Sometimes the world's troubles make us doubt our lovability, and we ask, will I ever have a happily ever after? We ask it because there's a built-in longing for it. Don't stab that desire to death. Recognize it for what it is, a longing for an intimate relationship with Jesus, which you can have right now, today. And always remember how the story ends. When I pick up a story, and if it's a difficult story, I can read it and get through it if I know already that it has a redemptive ending. If not, it's really hard for me to make it through it. Your story can have a redemptive ending. Accept God's overwhelming love for you. Really embrace it deep in your being. There's nothing you can do to make him love you less, and there's nothing you can do to make him love you more. His love is constant. Once we get a really firm grasp on this, it frees us up to love the imperfect mate that we have. It frees us up from striving for perfection on earth. We get a realistic perspective, which hopefully changes our expectations. Can you and your spouse be happy? Yes, but not every moment of every day. Challenges and disagreements will come. Work through them without resentment, and look forward to heaven, where he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. That's a promise from Revelation 21:4 that we can hang on to on those rough days. This week, take a few moments and ask Jesus or the Father, how much do you love me? Then be still. Picture him with you in your mind and listen for his answer in your heart. It will be quiet and subtle, but I encourage you to write it down, read and reread it until it soaks in deeply. I've done this, and it's so meaningful. May God flood you with his love. May you feel his presence. And as Ephesians 3:18 tells us, may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep is his love for us. If this has impacted you, and I pray that it has, I ask you to share it with someone else. And if you want to hear more, subscribe and like. That helps me as well. Have a great week. Go in peace and joy and his love.